Welcome again to Woodmont this Easter Sunday. Again this year, I have to say that I'm anxiously waiting to hear from some of you about what Santa brought you for Christmas this past Christmas. But I am glad that you are here. I'm glad everybody is here, and I welcome you to worship on this very special Sunday. Would you join me this morning for a word of prayer? Loving God, speak to us through these words in Luke's gospel on this Easter Sunday. And may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. Open our hearts, God, to the miracle that is the resurrection. Amen. I wish I could forget Friday, September the 2nd, 2005. I wish I could block it out of my mind. I was living in Memphis. I had recently moved back there from Princeton, had become an ordained minister. I had a mother who had battled depression, mental illness for a long time. And one of the reasons I moved back to Tennessee was my desire to help her, to be there for her. Well, it was Labor Day weekend. I was about to board an airplane to fly to Oklahoma to watch TCU play Oklahoma in Norman for the kickoff to the college football season. I was getting in line and my cell phone rang, and it was my sister, Kari. And she called me, and she was crying. And she said that she had gone to our mom's house and she found a suicide note, but she couldn't find our mother anywhere. Well, I left the airport, and by the time I got back to the house and pulled in the driveway, there was an ambulance and a fire truck and a couple of police cars and neighbors standing in the yard, and I knew what that meant. My mom was dead. A suicide had ended a long battle with mental illness. I couldn't believe it. It was like I was living a bad dream, but I couldn't wake up. That event changed my life forever. I no longer had a mother. She would never get to meet my wife or any of my children. Not only that, but she would inflict pain and guilt on us that would last a lifetime. And that's what happens when you lose somebody to suicide, as some of you know. Lots of unanswered questions. Lots of wondering, what if? Lots of second guessing as to what you could have done differently. I thought about getting out of the ministry. I thought about going to law school or going and getting a PhD. Both of those things I had considered before. I was angry at God. Why would God let this happen to me and to my family? Was this my reward for answering the call into the ministry? I didn't deserve it. Neither did my siblings. We were good people. And now we had a tragedy on our hands. Our foundation was rocked and devastated. 25 years of memories flashed before my eyes. I'd never felt that kind of pain and emptiness before. But the fact that I'm standing here, almost 11 years later, giving an Easter sermon, is evidence of a discovery that I made in the weeks and in the months after that tragic event. Everybody hurts. Everybody experiences pain. Everybody has those moments in life when they feel like they can't go on and they cry out, "Why God? Why me? Why now?" You've been there. Maybe not in the same situation, but you've been there. In Luke's Easter account, we're told that the women went to the tomb early on the third day, and when they got there, they found that the stone had been rolled away. And they went inside, and they didn't find the body. Two men appeared in dazzling white clothes, and they tried to console the grieving women because they were terrified. But the men asked them a profound question. "Why do you look for the living among the dead? He's not here. He's risen, just as he said he would. And then they remembered Jesus' words that he would be crucified and he would rise again on the third day. Why do you look for the living among the dead? What is Easter to you? What does it mean? Is it a cultural thing? Is it a necessary stop on the way to brunch? Is it a one-time event that just needs to be checked off the list? What is Easter? The resurrection is God's eternal yes to the world's temporal no's. The resurrection is the power of God's love to take the absolute worst that human beings can do and not let it be the final word. Easter is the world's great history lesson of how God's love turns despair into joy, defeat into victory, and death into new life. And in a world like ours that has as much pain and heartache and trouble, we need this message. We need it desperately. I don't have a long sermon for you this morning. Please don't act excited about that. I have 3 simple messages that I want to share with you this Easter. You can take one or you can take all 3. The first message is this: Jesus heals. Life is full of pain. Life is full of heartache and disappointment. Life is full of conflict, and we all get banged up, some more than others. But Jesus heals. He always has. And if the church can't be in the healing business, then I'm not sure why we're here. That's why I stayed in the ministry. I wanted to be in the healing business. That's why my wife is a doctor. She wanted to be in the healing business. That's why recovery groups are so important. It's why we support them here at this church, because they are in the healing business, and in many cases, they're doing the work of the church. Woodmont is going to be in the healing business. Anything short of that is unacceptable. So bring your pain and your hurt and your heartache and your disappointment and your grief, and this church will do its best to help you find comfort and reassurance. Because Jesus heals. He heals throughout the Gospels, and he still heals today. Jerry Sitzer wrote a very powerful book a number of years ago. I've given it to many people that have been dealing with grief. And Sitzer, you have to understand, wrote this book out of his own pain, because what happened to him, he lost 3 generations of women in his family in a car wreck. His 4-year-old daughter, his wife, and his mother were, boom, vanished in a car wreck that he and his other children survived. And so Sitzer wrote this book called A Grace Disguised, out of his own pain. And in the book, he talks about the soul. And he says the soul is elastic. It's like a balloon. It can grow larger through suffering. Loss can enlarge its capacity for anger and depression, despair and anguish, all natural and legitimate emotions whenever we experience loss. But once it's enlarged, the soul is also capable of experiencing greater joy, strength, peace, and love. Sitzer says those who suffer loss live suspended between a past for which they long and a future for which they hope. Catastrophic loss, by definition, precludes recovery. It will either transform us or destroy us, but it does not leave us the same. There's no going back to the past, which is gone forever. Only going ahead to the future, which is yet to be discovered. Of course, everybody deals with their pain in life differently. Some drink too much. Some take too many pills. Some become sarcastic or arrogant. Some find themselves shopping all the time, buying stuff that they don't need. Some live in a constant state of denial. Some just lash out at others, even those that are closest to them. But each of these things is only a temporary means to escape our pain and our hurt. We have to deal with our pain. We can't run from it. One of my theology professors named Daniel Migliore says, human beings are part of the natural order established by God, and like other creatures, we are subject to its laws. Being a finite creature includes the possibility of pain and illness and grief and failure, incapacity, and the certainty of aging and eventual death. Creaturely life is transient. It has a beginning and an end. God has created the world in which there is both birth and death, both rationality and contingency, both order and freedom, risk and vulnerability, and in such a world, challenge and struggle and some forms of suffering belong to the very structure of life. He says to wish that we were immune from the pain and the struggle of life would be to wish to have not been created at all. It's inevitable. We all face it. We all have to deal with it. It's not realistic to think that we won't experience pain. Pain and loss is a part of life. And so we have to remember that Jesus heals. And he heals through us. And he can heal us when we least expect it. My second message this Easter: stop living in fear. Just this week we saw what happened in Brussels. ISIS blew up the airport, killing dozens, including some Vanderbilt graduates we heard this weekend, wounding hundreds. What's wrong with those people? What a sick way to live. The media will cover it day and night and keep it right before us until the next event happens. And so we are in fear all the time. And fear is a powerful force. Perhaps the most powerful of all forces. If you look at Matthew's Easter account, you'll find 4 words. Do not be afraid. The angel says to the women, do not be afraid. I know you're looking for Jesus who was crucified. He's not here. He's been risen. Jesus later appears to the women and he says exactly the same thing. Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee and there they will see me. That's an Easter message. Stop living your life in fear. Too many of us live our lives in fear every day. But if we reflect back upon Jesus' life and ministry, what do we see? It was a continuous message to have courage and to live in faith. He says, don't worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink. When he was asleep on the boat and the disciples came and woke him up because the storm was out of control, what did he say? Why are you afraid? You have little faith. When he asked Peter to get out of the boat and come walking towards him on water, and Peter starts to sink, what does he say? You have little faith. Why did you doubt? Think about the bravery that he showed a week ago entering Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, the courage that he had to cleanse the temple, to call out the religious leaders, to face the system. Do we have that kind of courage? Think about Gethsemane. He prayed, if this cannot pass from me, not my will, but your will be done. If we want to be like Jesus, we can't live in fear. We can't get up every day wondering what bad thing is going to happen to us next, wondering what's going to go wrong, wondering who we can trust and who's going to stab us in the back, wondering if everything's going to be okay. It's called living in faith. And a life of fear is no life at all. And of course, one of our greatest fears is death. But Easter reminds us that Jesus conquered death. He said, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do we believe that? Do we live like we believe that, or do we just say that and wonder if it's true. There will come a point in time for all of us when we'll be put to the test on that. My final message this Easter: new life and new beginnings are all around us. That's the power of resurrection. Why do you look for the living among the dead? Do you need a new start? Do you need a new beginning? You've got it. Paul writes to the Corinthians, if anyone is in Christ, they are a new creation. The old has passed away. See, everything has become new. Everything has become new. I don't know about you, but I want to live that way. I think there's two ways to live your life, and there's hybrids of each. You can live as if life is a burden, an inconvenience, a drag, a constant disappointment. Nothing will ever be good enough. Nothing is ever right. Nothing ever goes your way. Everybody has it out for you. You never get what you deserve. Or you can live your life as though every day is a precious gift. Every day is an adventure. And if you're open to the love and the healing presence of God, then you just might be surprised at any given moment. The first way, routine, repetitive, burdened, disappointed, worn out, negative, cynical, exhausting. The second way, excited, thankful, alive, present, adventurous, positive, energized, always ready for what's going to happen. I don't know if you've noticed, but we've developed a problem in our culture. We've developed a problem in our culture, and the problem is that many people cannot be present. They're preoccupied, and they're addicted to their phones and to many other things. They're regretting the past and they're dreading the future, but they're not alive in the present moment, and this is no way to live. Life will pass you by, and you'll wonder where the time went. You'll wonder why you missed out on so much. Your children will grow up and they'll move away. Your marriage will grow stale because you neglected. Your friends that you used to have will drift on because you didn't nurture the friendship. Real life, fullness of joy and meaning and peace of mind is only found in our day-to-day personal relationships. It's whether or not we love people. What good is it to build a great career if you lose your marriage in the process? What good is it to make tons and tons of money if your kids don't have any respect for you? What good is it to outshine your neighbor if your neighbors don't know who you are and they aren't even your friends? No wonder Jesus said a person's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. It cannot consist in the abundance of possessions. That's the shallow way to live. Where net worth becomes self-worth. Where you don't know people for who they are, but only for what they have. That's the shallow way to live. Unfortunately, we live in an age of increasing selfishness and growing egos, and materialism is on the rise, and it's slowly but surely leading to a bankruptcy of the human soul. And Jesus gives us a timeless guideline for living. We call it the Golden Rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Love your neighbor as yourself. Forgive if you want to be forgiven. Do you need a new beginning on this Easter? Do you need a new beginning in a relationship, a family member, a child, a spouse, a church member? If you can't do it at Easter, then when can you do it? My friend Scott Callglazer says there's resurrection all around us. Every day there's resurrection Daily there are moments when life breaks through, and maybe we can't explain it or predict it or schedule it, but if we have eyes to see and hearts to feel, it's there. Awe, wonder, joy. It's in the eyes of someone you love. It's in the human stories of love triumphing over hate. It's in the presence of God enduring with us when we go through our little moments of dying, and we all have those moments. I love what Frederick Buechner said. He got asked that question that Christians love to ask. Have you been born again? What'd he say? I've been born again and again and again and again. That's Easter. That's the resurrection. When we lose a job or a career, when we lose someone that we love dearly, when cancer is diagnosed, when marriage comes to an end, when depression keeps us from getting out of bed in the morning, when our retirement money goes away, when we find out that our friends aren't really our friends, we must be born again and again and again and again. That's Easter. It's new life in this world and beyond. Join me in prayer, please. God, give us eyes to see the beauty of the spring and to behold your majesty in every living thing. And may we see in lacy leaves and every budding flower the hand that rules the universe with gentleness and with power. And may this Easter grandeur that spring lavishly imparts awaken faded flowers of faith lying dormant in our hearts. And give us ears to hear, dear God, the springtime songs of birds, with messages more meaningful than our often empty words, telling harried human beings who are lost in dark despair, be like us and do not worry, for you, God, have us in your care. Amen.